This record is intended to help young people solve some of the personal problems that they're faced with. No one person lives in a vacuum. Everything you do has a definite effect on many people.
Hello, John J. Thompson here, welcoming you to another episode of the True Tunes podcast, one that I have been looking forward to since we started this thing. I first met Jason Petty, known professionally as Propaganda, at a late-night rap showcase at South by Southwest back in 2013. He and Lecrae were the only gospel-driven artists on the bill that night, and they were amazing. I had been aware of Prop's work as a spoken word artist, even going back to his days with the Tunnel Rats, but to see him command that club that night was mind-blowing. In the years since, I've become a bigger and bigger fan.
You soon find that socioeconomic status does nothing for his skin color. To them, he just a well-dressed coon whose parents got lucky. He's the butt of subliminal jokes, like his friends refer to rap as jungle jive. They see him and go, yo, homie, yo. That's how y'all talk, right? He's checked out. He's found other outlets. His good grades don't fix his depraved brain. He believes the gospel of young money. YOLO. Yo, and as your mama drops you off at the mall, remember as you scope out them dunks, and every bite you take of that number one animal style is a bite you stole from your daughter's tummy. Them dunks is about a month worth of diapers and food you finna put on your feet. Homie, this is your fault. Your job, your responsibility. Don't get mad when mama don't give you $20. It's your turns. I don't know what to tell you, and I ain't got an answer.
Prop is a poet, author, political activist, husband, father, academic, and MC with a new book and music project out called Terraform. He uses the image of creating a space for life to thrive on Mars as a metaphor for the kind of work people of faith should be doing right here and now on Earth. He is as provocative and relevant as ever, but in many ways this multimedia project presents his impressive intellect and generous heart, not to mention his prodigious musical skill, in the most compelling way yet.
Yeah. You know, if we not careful, Mars will be just another gold rush. What? You know, if we ain't careful, Mars will be just another gold rush. Another pre-Columbian America. You know, if we not careful, Mars will be just another gold rush. Just another gold rush. Another pre-Columbian America. Scraping, raping, scratching, gouging, making up lines, then screaming mine in the newly formed oxygen, tapping planetary veins in search of arrogance in the forms of rocks. Imaginary wealth, you know, the real millionaires of the gold rush were the shovel salesmen. I think we going about this all wrong. We going about this all wrong.
A bit later, we'll crank up the jukebox and take a listen to another gospel-informed artist making socially engaged and confrontational art, Midnight Oil. As Peter Garrett and company prepare to put that amazing band to rest, we'll consider the impact of their work, past and present.
The Breakfast Creek Hotel is up for sale. The last square mile of terra firma gaveled in the mail. So farewell to the Norfolk Island Pines. No amount of make-believe can help this heart of mine. Your dream world is just about to end. Your dream world is just about to fall. Your dream world will fall.
It all kicks off right after we take care of a little bit of housekeeping.
Hello, my name's Rob, and I'm one of the Patreon backers of the True Tunes podcast. I'm honored to invite you to join me in support of True Tunes by signing up on their email list. I know email is often annoying, but by being on the list, I get notified when new episodes drop and when new articles get posted at truetunes.com. Sometimes, John even sends out short notes and gives away records and swag and stuff. Super cool. But really, the point is that by staying directly connected, I know that they don't have to pay Facebook or anyone else in order for me to hear from them, and that's important. They don't send out too many emails either, and I'm always happy to get them. So really, it would be helpful if you join me over here. You can find the sign-up link on the front page at truetunes.com. Oh, and don't forget to add John's email address, jjt@truetunes.com, to your contacts so that the emails don't get caught in your spam filter. And if you have any feedback on the show or questions, you can email him and he'll get back to you. Eventually. Thanks for listening.
They tell me the city sings a song, and you can't help but sing along. And I be looking in their eyes like, I'm sorry, you dead wrong. Like we came from birth sinning in very meager beginnings, where all we had was spam and an interceding grammar. And I tried to read the word but didn't understand the grammar, till his grace came and gave me a new brain. But you cannot tell me that poverty is bigger than sovereignty. We lived in the same projects as you, lived right next to you, dodged the same bullets. I've even spent time in the burbs, that's my word. And when you born off a laundry with drugs and money launderers, now a husband and a father, that's proof that God loved you. See, we chose not to slang, and that gave me much more bravery than them OGs would ever give me credit for. Cause the road was so lonely, we had God only, and fools would creep by slowly like, what up, homie?
I've been wanting to have Propaganda on the show since we started. He is absolutely one of my favorite hip-hop artists and thinkers on the scene over the last decade or so. His take on social issues and his melodic and organic musical accompaniment favorably recalls the groundbreaking work of Arrested Development and De La Soul. I thought about just sitting down with him at the Audiophile Festival in July, where we will both be present, but I really didn't want to risk it not working out. So, join me now in the True Tunes virtual interview suite and enjoy. So, man, Propaganda, thank you for being here on the True Tunes podcast. It is awesome to see you, even if it's on a little screen.
I know, right? Thank you. We was having some really stupid technical difficulties here that made for stupid things that have to change and stupid.
It's kind of funny how, you know, we're sitting here talking to each other on our computers, looking at screens from all the way across the country. And it's a miracle that even works. And yet when something doesn't work, it just makes me furious. Like I expect everything. Like, I'm entitled to absolutely. Right. I am absolutely entitled to speak with clarity and visual connection to people all over the planet, and you can't take that right from me. What is
absolutely.
that? Man, it's
exactly
great to
how
see
I feel.
So, first things first, what coffee have you had so far today?
Oh, man.
That's a big thing for you.
There it is. Third cup.
Third cup. Just don't drop the phone into the coffee. That would be
right. Third cup of coffee. Oh my God. All right. I was trying to have my charger on. Okay, never mind. All right. Third cup of coffee. Let's see. I did spill some on myself just now. This is a great podcast.
This is the best.
I had basically two V60s, so 2 pour overs, and then this is a espresso shot of the same El Salvadorian bean from this roaster called Manhattan Roasters. So I'm drinking good, and I'm drinking too much, apparently.
That's all right, man. Have you ever gotten into roasting coffee at all?
Bro, I feel like it's a whole other art form, so I'm like, I've kind of been staying away. One thing I did do, though, was like, I wanted to teach myself how to do like the old school, like Ethiopian sort of coffee ceremony, like roasting over open coals. I've done that once or twice. And I think like if I am going to roast, I want to roast like that.
I be standing in the mirror, thinking about my life phases, practicing saying phrases like I'm wrong, I'm sorry, I love you, I'm down for that do-over, wisdom hiding in my smile lines, promise very little worth losing, really over. I remember in them days up under the lustful gaze of the sun of the morning, looking like prop that easy come up, but I was thinking my ways was anything less than praise of the God of thunder, lightning, and wonder. Funny, I might have been self-defeating, self-misleading, missing hang time, afraid to miss meetings.
I love the account you have of the Ethiopian coffee ritual. That's obviously the birthplace of coffee.
Yeah.
They really respect the ritual and the sanctity of and it's the moment between people. Tell me about when you had that experience in Ethiopia.
Oh man, besides just like weeping uncontrollably by the beauty, you know, and then just my own sort of historical kind of like ancestral connection to the place, which I found out after I left, you know, that like I did have that. But just, yeah, like the idea that like, first of all, inviting you into the moment is a position of honor. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like I was told by the locals, like, yo, if they offer you tea, they're just being polite because it's fast. You know what I'm saying? But if it's like, yo, you want some coffee? It's like, oh, this is like an hour situation. So it's like, sit down, get comfortable. We want to talk, you know? And so when that happened, you know, again, like just waterworks, like, I can't believe this is really my life right now, you know? And, yeah, it was just very emotional. And it was, and like at the end, ultimately, like probably the best coffee I've ever had, you know?
They're roasting it in the fire and it's going to be a pretty dark roast. And then they're going to use it
right then.
Yeah, immediately.
Yeah.
And I remember being in Mexico many years ago, documenting stories of what some medical missionaries were doing down there. And at one point we're in the middle of the desert in the Baja Peninsula, and we go visit this church, in quotes, because their church was a slab of concrete that had been poured down in the middle of the desert, and so they could build a tent on it, right? To them, that was the most, it was a big project to bring that concrete all the way from La Paz, hours into the desert, set it down. It was a community effort. They were so proud of that thing. And when we visited with this rancher and his wife, they made coffee by grabbing coffee from a bag or a canister and throwing it in a pot. It was already ground up, and they threw it in a metal pot on an open fire and just let it boil. And then they just poured it. There's no filters. There was nothing. It was just, and they had somehow in the middle of the desert, they had these beautiful china cups that somebody had given them as gifts, old, kind of cracked here and there. And having that coffee, there was so much that we would think, oh, this is wrong, you know, but the moment was so sacred and so beautiful.
Yeah.
Think about like the first time you remember thinking there's more going on here than what meets the eye. As a kid, or at what point in your life did you start thinking something like coffee was worth investigating and thinking deeper about?
Well, definitely not as a kid. Coffee, as far as like something more going on, I mean, it started with touring, you know, when you are just like shoving whatever you can into your body so you can stay awake for the drive, you know? Right. And then once you get to a place, finding somewhere to kill some hours that has good Wi-Fi, you know, and, and you're just trying things, and you start noticing, for me, it was like, I started noticing the art of brewing coffee and that it was tasting different. And I was like, man, there's really an art form to this. And then when discovering it came from Africa and it only grows at the equator, that's when when the light switch hit, where I was like, oh, it's something else here. So I think once finding out it was from Ethiopia was like, oh yeah, there's something else going on here. And then looking around and being like, yo, this is like a remarkably white space. Like there's only white people here. You know what I'm saying? And being oh, y'all consuming black products. All right. Now we're on to something. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. Whole city. Indeed. We are the culture. Whole city. We are the culture. How you finna hate whatever God got planned? How I'm supposed to chase what I already am? We are the culture. Whole city. We are the culture. What up, cuz? You got them loving your bubbling, throwing dubs and doubling. What up, blood? You got them flying in just to say they been up Bompton. What up, Holmes? You originated, teardrops on our faces. What up, Oos? Now even the cartoons got tribal tattoos. We ain't worried about y'all, whatever y'all got in stores. Make the thing hot, whatever we say goes. One time for the Vatos, the Palindero. One time for the homegrown, the West Coast. Them yo dances and Cortezes and T-stances. Pendletons, Dickies, white tees with starch creases. Yeah, that's you, Heiner, with the winged eyeliner. You should tell the fashion blog, my Thea did it before. Man, we all just a kid from somewhere. A part of town, a hood, a street, a avenue. Oh yeah, you muscle up your hustles, taking every advances. Now the whole world doing your dances. We are the culture. Whole city.
You know, my father was a Black Panther. My father had me learning things well before people of my age were learning things, you know, and sort of understanding the world and what it meant to be a global citizen. Like, I was learning that stuff way young. And I think my first love being visual arts. So as like an illustrator, like if you're going to draw, you have to observe, and you have to observe well. So I think that muscle of observation sort of translated into from like just visual to like cultural, you know what I mean? Yeah. And seeing things from multiple angles and understanding things from multiple angles. Like, I think that was something I've always, from that young age of like my dad making me like write book reports to him, you know, not even to my school, but like to him, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Plus like enjoying, like figuring out how to draw stuff. And that was just from like observing closely. I think that's probably like the origins.
Dear Board of Education, so are we. So are we. At no point in the lives that we actually live do we sit in rows and listen to pontifications. At no point did Mama pass written exams out on how to wash the dishes. No. She pulled the stool up next to her at the sink, handed us a dish rag, like, watch how Mommy does it, now you try. Learning by doing, such a crazy idea, it might work. Them stools felt like magical ladders into an altered universe, into the grown-up world, informational portholes, wormholes, into other places where kids were equals, being made privy to information only those with driver's license and facial hair had. Who knew we were learning? No clue Pops was teaching us time management and budgeting, miniature project coordinators. He said, I'm gonna show you how to do these chores, and if they're done when I get home, then that allowance is yours. Maybe some ice cream's involved too. Remember when we were in kindergarten and you had to learn about worms? Yeah, you went outside and you played with worms. What a novel idea. Dear Board of Education. So are we.
This book, Terraform, such a great example of the call for us to create space for life and community to thrive. I mean, I love it. And I love the metaphor of Mars, like trying to make a place. And it might be easier to build a place for life to thrive on Mars than on Earth right now.
Absolutely.
Things are so divided. Yeah. Is this book, because it includes poetry, it includes lyrics from some of your songs, it includes these essays, even sketches.
Yeah.
So how did this come together? Is this kind of a culmination of what you're talking about, or is it something you've been working on for a long time?
I think my manager a couple years back kind of asked me like, hey, what do you want to talk about for the next 10 years? And I was like, 10? You know? So I was like, dang, this is like, so we're talking like, this is an opus. Like, all right, this is like, this need to be like a master thesis here. So when I came across that term, Terraform, I was like, okay, the term is pregnant enough. It's big enough to fit 10 years of content in. And I think as far as like the layout of it, you know, people have been asking me to write a book for a while, but I just knew I didn't want to write a standard book. I was like, that just doesn't excite me. And I was like, I knew I wanted the book to be poetry and short story. And the illustration was just like, again, it's my first love. So I was like, I want this book to be art. And sometimes that's like to my detriment, you know what I mean? So now I'm like, I don't know. When I walked into the bookstore to try to see my book on the shelf, I was like, I don't know what shelf it's on. You know? Yeah. And I was like, where? You're
lucky to have found a bookstore too.
Yeah. There's a few like indie ones around the way. And I was like, where does this go? You know? And I ended up finding it in essays.
Well, there's a section for essays.
Yeah, I know. That whole, but like I said, it was an independent bookstore. So I was like,
yeah, right.
You would have a section for essays. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But so I think the way it cobbled together was more of a reflection of like, I like stuff that whatever it is, that it's also a work of art, you know?
I've written a few books, and it's no small feat. And I'm a music guy, it's like being an author is not my core gig, right? So when you're trying to do something as big as write a book, in addition to everything else that you're trying, especially you with your schedule, tell me how it actually came together, because it's remarkably well written.
Thanks, man.
You're articulate, and then you're able to use language and alternate spellings so that it really flows like a conversation. I can hear your voice in the pages. But gosh,
some of the
260 pages of this stuff. I mean, that's a lot of work.
Well, there's wide margins, so it's like that's going to get you a lot of pages. No, I think that the tone and the way that it's like, well, this is clearly my voice. I think some of that was just because I didn't know any better. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't know how to not write any other way. You know what I'm saying? So that I've gotten that compliment a lot. Like, man, it feels like I'm just sitting down and talking to you. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
you are.
I didn't know how else to write. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's that. You know what I'm saying? But I think really what had me sit down and focus was, it was the pandemic. Like, it was nowhere to go. So I was like, it was hard to write raps at that time. Like, if you got to stop and make dino nuggets for your daughter, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, well, can't really catch a vibe with the music. So but I could write poetry. I could write stories right now, so really just having that time at home, was how I was able to knock it out.
Let me tell you about the second whitest email I've ever gotten. If you're lucky, one day I'll tell you about the whitest email I've ever gotten. It came from what turned out to be a phenomenal organization called Great Objects, a part of the Gates Foundation, that does remarkable justice work across the globe. Little did I know at the time, the Gates in the Gates Foundation was Bill Gates. He wanted to meet me once, but I didn't connect the dots until much later. Stupid prop. I digress. Back to this extremely, utterly white email. Now, some of you might be asking, what in the world is a white email? That's a fair question. After all, emails are not persons. Therefore, they can't claim any socio-ethnic ties. It's ridiculous to call objects a race. Race, of course, is a social construct anyway. However, objects can have characteristics consistent with characteristics of a group of people. For example, I shop at black stores all the time. What makes a store black? The items that are sold there, like Blue Magic, Royal Crown, TCB, and flat irons. Don't know what I'm talking about? I'm not even gonna tell you. Just know these things are vital for the survival of black people. We know exactly what to do with these products. Confused? That's the way I felt about this email. The email was inviting me on an all-expenses-paid camping trip in a forest located a couple hours outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Now, stop right there. You tell me how wise it is to follow white people into the forest outside of Nashville, Tennessee.
That was a clip from the Harper audio version of Terraform, Building a Better World by Propaganda. We'll link to that on the show notes page for this episode. When you sat down and said, okay, this is going to start to come together, this picture of Terraform, and then applying it to these different areas of life and activity, and even giving people homework. How did that organization evolve in your mind? Like, how to apply that metaphor?
Yeah, the homework, actually my manager thought of that too, because one thing that I'm like, you can never accuse me of is making something simple. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's his thing. He's always like, yo, like, it's going to take me so long to understand what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. My boy DJ Promo, like one of my closest friends, he's like, I still finally understand I Am Becoming, which was like a book I wrote of just poems in 2015 that we self-published. He's like, I just now get the title. Like,
oh, wow.
Oh my God, I am becoming. Like, oh, I understand what he's saying. So he's like, so they kept telling me, like, that's the way people interact with your work. Like, we know it's brilliant. We won't really know what you're saying until some years later. So He was like, man, and the editor I worked with, they were like, look, like, keep distilling, like, get it to where we can get our brains around it, you know? So the homework was a part of that. And some of the, you know, iterations of stuff was like trying to make it like so applicable to everyday life was them making me, okay, distill it some more. Okay, you think what you're saying is clear. And it's clear, it's still way up there, bro. You know what I mean? So
well, sometimes I think it's because we have, I could be reading this and be thinking he's articulating his thoughts on this concept really clearly. How does this apply to me?
Yeah.
You know, like, and we don't often do that. We don't always at least do that with books because the point is to read what the author's saying. But I really like how you kind of anchor those things and say, now, before you go on to the next section, take some time.
Yeah.
It's a Selah. You know, it's like, take some time to really think about how this applies to you.
Yeah.
And it grounds it.
The world is ours, let's go map the stars. Vacation in a spaceship, you two fly for cars. Somebody breathe the air in Neptune. That's why we named our daughters after sun and moon. That's our song. I heard your dance moves was notorious. As beautiful as northern lights were more glorious. Sometimes the pull of gravity too strong. We got pride, we got goals, short term and long. Look, all I'm saying is what we made, we gotta sustain. I love it in your galaxy, I'm not one to complain. We all know the reality, nothing like a Cali girl. Don't care about no salary, not of this world. I get DMs from these young artists navigating industry. Prop, I think that Hollywood is finna be the end of me. How you keep humility? You ain't crazy so far. I tell them, little homie, find you a North Star. You could go. I just look up. I know you right there.
We'll be right back with more of my conversation with Propaganda after this.
Hey, this is Ray, and I'm a Patreon backer of the True Tunes podcast. I have also left a rating and review of the show at Apple Podcasts. It wasn't that hard. It didn't cost me anything. But this show means a lot to me, and I know that reviews and ratings make a big difference when it comes to how and if others discover these conversations. Would you take a few minutes, maybe even while you're listening, but please not while you're driving, to leave a rating and review? Even if you don't listen on Apple Podcasts, the reviews posted there push out to podcast platforms all around the world. Oh, and take some time to tell your friends about the show. Let's drive those numbers up together. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Chris, and I'm a Patreon supporter of the True Tunes podcast, which has quickly become one of my favorite podcasts. I can always expect John's warm voice and insightful questions to draw out the stories, wisdom, and faith of beloved and new to me musical artists. After every episode, I'm always listening with fresh ears to favorite albums or visiting new albums for the first time. It's just like when I used to visit the old True Tunes store in Wheaton, Illinois, but now I can visit every week with new episodes. True Tunes Patreon supporters support the show with monthly donations of $5, $10, or $20, which helps cover the cost of producing and hosting the show. As a thanks for our support, we get early access to episodes and high-quality, lossless WAV files of each episode that we can download. We also have occasional Zoom meetups, some special live streams, discounts on True Tunes swag, and more. You can join me and the other patrons by visiting patreon.com/TrueTunes or finding the link on the show notes page. If an ongoing patronage thing is not the right fit for you, but you'd like to give us a tip to help with the costs associated with this show, you can find links for that on the show notes page. Thanks, and enjoy.
Okay, we're back with more of my conversation with Propaganda. So far, as you've been out traveling and you've been around people who have interacted with this book, And are you doing events where you're doing music and you're speaking and you're kind of like, has your
Yeah,
live show
like,
become kind of like the book?
Yes. There's hasn't been many because of like, you know, just the slow, like rolling away of being able to be outside. But generally, yeah, it's like, it's not much different than like how a show would be anyway. Like if you were to come see me, you know what I mean? Where there is speaking, poetry, and music, you know what I'm saying? But now rather than that just being my set, I'm like, well, no, this is the Terraform experience. You know what I'm saying?
One of the ideas you land on that really hit me, and I went back and kind of reread some of the sections, was this idea of telling better origin stories and revisionist history. And you know, usually you think of a revisionist history as a negative.
Yes.
Like somebody has gone back and changed the facts in order to justify what's going on now, which clearly that is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right? But you've got a different take on origin stories, identifying better origin stories, and revising history. Tell me about how that works in your mind and the benefit of that.
Yeah. I think that there's this, you know, based on what you're saying, like, yeah, the approach of like the facts of history are set in stone, and there's a arbiter and a protector of who gets to say what those facts are. And from that position, if we've accepted this as like a fixed piece of information, then anybody else's perspective on that moment is invalid, you know? Right. Therefore, you can form your perception of the present and the future based on these, again, fixed things in the universe, these facts of the past. And I think one being like, yeah, just being like a Black person in America, I'm already bucking against the idea of like your telling of the past being factual. You know what I'm saying? Right. And I'm like, I'm not saying what you said didn't happen. I'm just saying that happened from your perspective. You know what I mean? And then some of those things are in fact like misreadings or misunderstandings, like the idea that like, yeah, our founding fathers were Christians and they were trying to birth the Christian nation.
Let me tell you a story. What if the truths you spoke over your friends and family were more set in stone than what is actually set in stone? Want to hear an even crazier thought? I saw already how you live. True, good, and beautiful stories. I'm aware when you hear the word story, you might associate it with the idea of truth. We often ask if a story is true or fable. I think that's the wrong question, though. Let me give you a history lesson. Before the Enlightenment, then because of the Enlightenment, when we say true, we mean in an empirical sense. Can we measure or verify the factualness of something? For our purposes, the facts of the narrative are not really the point. For example, have you ever tried to recount a significant event, and as you are working through the story, you skip over a few parts or don't focus on other parts for the purpose of getting to the point? However, your buddy keeps correcting you like, nah, bro, that wasn't how it happened. It wasn't Sunday, it was Tuesday. Or, nah, dude, your shirt was blue, not red. It's not that your buddy is incorrect. It's just not the point you were trying to make. When I say stories, I mean, what does a story invoke in a person that brings forward the humanity necessary for a more livable world?
That was a clip from the Harper audio version of Terraform, Building a Better World by Propaganda. We'll link to that on the show notes page for this episode. I just learned recently, I was at a friend's house, he had an old book, and it's about African explorers and traders that made it to Florida. You know, so we even have this idea that every person of color in America descends from slaves, and that they, then we paint that whole thing with like, oh, savages and primitive cultures and all this stuff, and you find out, oh no, there were explorers here from Africa trading with Native American indigenous people.
Yes.
Way back, and that's never been taught. I mean, nobody
wants to know that one.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I knowing I'm doing that already in my own understanding of history, it was like I never thought about exploring it in my own story. You know what I'm saying? Of being like the things that I've accepted about, like you said, about Black people, but I think in a lot of ways just about who Jason is, came from these like fixed understandings of what I thought to be true. So the example I give, in the book is about one of my aunts, you know what I mean, who I thought she had a set of toys just for me at her house. And
Right.
I was like, oh yeah, my aunt loves me so much. This is so great. You know what I'm saying? And then my sister was like, no, those are Chester's. You know what I mean? And I'm like, wait, who? She's like, yeah, that's our aunt's stepson. That's our uncle's son from another marriage. And I was like, I didn't know Chester existed.
Right.
And I'm like, it's not that I'm changing the past. It's that some new information has been given to me that makes me think about the past differently. So I was like, it's not that my aunt don't love me no more. That's not what happened. It's that her love is greater than I thought it was.
Yeah.
So that's what a better story is. That's what revising means.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You
Right.
know, so if you're thinking of it as such, then you're like, oh, you can revise for good.
Mm-hmm.
You can revise for evil. You can revise into lies. Like there's, you know what I'm saying? Like you don't have to, it doesn't have to always be, again, this idea of like the past is this fixed thing that is what it is, when it's like, well, no, like, that's what's so interesting about history. History is us telling stories about ourselves.
Right. I think some people misunderstand because they think, oh, well, this is just about academics trying to figure out what happened before. What does this have to do with me? But you're saying that this process of engaging with our origin stories more mindfully, more thoughtfully, actually has an impact on our future.
Yes. I mean, it's like just this, it's like if you hold this idea that our origin story as a nation was God's plan, and we are our manifest destiny, you know what I'm saying, to be this like city on a hill, this beacon of light for the rest of the world, then moving forward into just the eradication of the indigenous is why you would move forward that way. Because You're like, well, this is our origin. Mm-hmm. Therefore, there's no problem moving forward doing anything else. You know what I'm saying?
We have to do this. God told us to do this. Like
we have to do this. Right. Or it's now like our inability to self-reflect collectively on like our little nose is not any more special than anyone else's little nose on the planet. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Therefore, when we move into any sort of like future wars, any sort of like political discourse, it's from this position that we believe this about ourselves. Therefore, we are going to move accordingly in the future. And it's like, well, what you believe about yourself may not necessarily be true. It just kind of came from the story you done told yourself. So that's what I mean by how it like affects your future.
Right.
Let me tell you about this shorthand me and you use. It's how we decide if somebody is safe. There's talking points. That's how you know if they in the fence or outside the fence. Whether you safe or not. I suggest a redo. Cause like it or not, we are all we got. We are all we got. Cause when your constructs fail, yeah, the ailment feels alien. What is this air we in? How is this fair to kin?
When you a shark being judged on how well you climb a tree, you might as well be a piece of kelp yelping at a blue whale, helpless. Toothless tiger with ruthless ire. I almost talk me out of my own desires. You try to tell them you different, made for magnificent, but those with lungs don't get the gill significance. Still standing stands a circumference of your comfort. Wanna say that, then don't invite me to your conference. I'm a speaker to the people defeating their conquistador. Telegraphing no moves, what these blinkers for. Great grandmammy, she managed and meant you peach you. Consider that an honor if she even stooped to speak to you. The least of you, you would be surprised what 2 feet could do. One mission execute, I don't know what we meeting for. A couple L's will teach you more than any war with liquor store, and you don't need a penny more than my chores. This is meant to disrupt othering. Look across the table in they eyes and see your own suffering, people. I just
In my experience, I had a really messed up childhood. My biological father was a sociopathic criminal, lots of trauma there that we had to escape. Now, there's stories there. There's a lot that I'd never thought about, just wanted it to be over with and stuff. And my mom ended up remarrying a great guy who adopted me when I was a teenager. And then enough time goes by that my mom and I were recently together, and she would ask me questions like, what's the earliest house you remember us living in? Or things that and I would share what I remembered, and she could then say, well, actually, this is what happened. Like that memory you have is a blend of 2 things that happened years apart, but in your mind, you've merged them. And as a kid with an identity crisis, with fearing that, I might inherit some sort of evil from my biological father, whatever.
Yeah.
Hearing a little bit more information and then being able to correct my origin story has actually helped me feel a sense of mission and purpose and peace with myself. But it requires some vulnerability. And doesn't it seem to you that one of the problems that a lot of people seem to have right now is we just don't want to admit we're wrong. We don't want to ever be corrected.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm saying, the inability to self-reflect. But I think that, again, comes from, like, the stories we told ourselves and how we shaped our identity. You know what I'm saying? But, like, that humility of being like, man, I might be thinking about this all wrong can add some beauty and can add some pain in the sense of, like, there's some things I may need to change about myself, because I'm thinking about it differently. And that's nobody wants to admit that. Nobody wants their identity to unravel.
Pain that guides us, the strings that tie us, the coincidence that proves to us God's existence. Joy we misplace, beautiful mistakes, the scarlet thread, the crimson cord. When your scars out loud, that's the fingerprints of the Lord. A crimson cord, baby, a crimson cord. A timeline, a scarlet thread, a crimson cord, baby, a crimson cord. Let me celebrate your crimson cord, and that's beautiful, a crimson cord. No regrets, boy, a crimson cord. Evidence of God's love, that's a crimson cord.
And you talk about Frankl. You bring up Frankl and his path to meaning. Tell me how that influenced you, because it seemed to tie into this too.
I mean, he's smarter than all of us. And I think that, like, the idea of somebody going through something as vicious as the Holocaust, I think a lot of times, the historical trauma of something like chattel slavery, which I feel like in the history of mankind, it's not like slavery is not new, but the type of slavery that was racially based around a white supremacist thing, you know what I'm saying, that you were born into it, like the type of slavery that, like, the 1619 Project and just that type of slavery, like, it was singular, in its existence in the world. And the idea that still sits in our psyche and in some ways in our DNA, that trauma is still there. It's almost like any Black person with any sense would want no interest in the religion of those people.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, why the hell would I ever want to be a Christian?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If this is what it makes, you feel me? So how do you find meaning in that? Like, and in my mind, I was like, there's nobody I wouldn't trust nobody else except for another Black person to talk about finding meaning in pain like this, like a collective meaning. Except for maybe a Holocaust survivor. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
To where you're like, oh, touche. You know what I'm saying? Which is, which I like to say, that type of, Nazi fascism and anti-Semitic feelings, I mean, it's fruits I mean, it's a branch of the same tree that created Jim Crow and chattel. It's the same, that supremacy is still the trunk. It just, because Hitler absolutely believed that the Jews were a different race. Like, he actually believed that, you know, which of course you get into now, you're like, what? You know, like, they white people. I don't understand what you know what I'm saying? But him believing that, and this man, you know, not in a very platitude way of like, it was okay this happened because I was able to find meaning. He's like, no, this wasn't okay.
Right.
This was evil. And I don't know why evil happened to us.
Right.
I can't give you no, what was God's plan? Is like, well, that's a shitty plan if that was his plan. You know, it's not that. It's like, it happened. I survived it. I need to find a way to continue to live, you know, and that sort of fortitude of mind to be like, I need to find a way to live, you know, that's honest, was something that I think why I wanted to put that in the book. Cause I'm like, I don't want anyone to think that like I'm telling them that their pain, you know, is transactional. As simple as that. It's like, no, what I'm trying to say is like, let's find a way to be in the world.
If I was you, I would appropriate us too. Let it sit. It's understandably confusing depending on tool you're using. Just come through Alexandria Library, drips through these fingertips. Mental state miserable, your wings don't fit. You bigger than your body, give you credit for a metaphor for how I see us, these creatures we settled for. We are actually fascinating, actuating. You make poverty a play haven. Public Indian prayers made of cornmeal and turquoise. Harvesting dreams with the medicine of the Iroquois. Different like the cloth we cut from. A creative nature with the joy we came from. The truth you can't run from. The style and finesse are a nectar of a broken neck. You wanna drink the juice but can't live through tight squeezes. But I don't pay the price, I pay dues. But the pain is paint, and quit I can't. And your faith is rank, and your attitude stank. And I couldn't stand to think the states without Ma Rainey or Count Basie. Trap music, y'all crazy. Black women are North Stars if we fallen.
Why do you suppose right now, in the U.S. in particular, so many people, especially Christians, people that call themselves Christians, are so afraid of thinking critically about these systems of pain in our past? You know, what do you suppose is driving that? And maybe also, what's the key to get out of that and to find some freedom to
I can answer both of those questions with the same answer. I don't know. Man, I do not. I honestly, like, it's baffling to me. I think that there's, if I were to wax philosophical and hypothesize, I think there's a reality of, again, like your identity unraveling. And that's like, like to have to think, especially on the Christian side, to have to rethink these things that seem to be thousands of years of recorded history and truth, for someone to say, I don't think so, Jake. You know what I mean? Like, right. And that's like so absurd, because in some ways it's this domino effect. It's like, if I pull this string and give to you that, like, maybe I'm thinking about this wrong, then the ever descending sort of logical steps that got us there also have to be unraveled. Right. You know what I'm saying? If this is true, then that means I got to rethink this, which means I got to rethink that, which means I got to rethink this. And now you back hundreds of years, right. You know what I'm saying? And you're like, is the whole thing a lie? And you're like, well, that's unthinkable, you know?
Unless you get back to where you say, well, the whole thing starts with Jesus saying, pick up your cross and follow me. And I don't think he meant that as a military strategy. It's not like put the cross in front of Constantine's army and go kick ass for God. It's pick up the means of your own torture and execution. That sounds
but if you're like, I've been to seminary, my pastor's been to seminary, no one's ever said, you know what I'm saying? Then you're
right.
I get how me going, all right, what I'm trying to tell you is you're you don't even got to go back that far. You could just go back to the election of Nixon and being like, your faith was weaponized as a political bloc. And this is why you call yourself that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You're like, well, I was there. It's like, well, I mean, again, you're not reading your history. You know what I'm saying? If you was reading it, you would know. You feel me? And just like things like that, you know, like your precious denomination would have like little barbecues around lynching black people. You'd go to church, come out, have a picnic, and lynch somebody. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, yes, that was your church. You know why I know? Because it was happening to us. You know what I'm saying? And that's unthinkable when you're like, accept that it's true. You know? So having to like wrestle with that is like, yeah, it's an existential crisis. So I get why nobody wants to go down that path, you know? Now, what's the way forward? I think, again, it's like, you got to look at the void, man. You got to stare into the darkness and being willing. And hell, we've been doing it the whole time. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, you're just going to have to do it. And, you know, I think a lot of historians have said that, like, you know, America never repented for its original sin. You know, it just never did. You know what I'm saying? And I'm saying it never admitted it ever had one, you know? So I'm like, if you're not going to do that, then I don't know. I don't know. That's why I'm like, man, I don't know the way forward. If nobody's willing to do that, you know what I'm saying? But like I said, if I'm waxing philosophical, I think that's it. But yeah, our where we are politically, I'm like, as a church, you know, as a nation, I'm like, me as somebody who studies history, I'm like, it's the downswing of an empire. Like, we're on the downswing. Like, this just, I mean, it's fine. You know what I mean? Like, the Dutch exist. They were an empire. You know what I'm saying? There's such thing as Great Britain. You know what I'm saying? They were an empire. You know what I'm saying? China was an empire. Like, all these people, every modern state has crashed. Like, it's happened before. You know? So I'm like, we're on borrowed time, guys. And these are all the signs of it. You know? And I'm like, it's fine. We'll be fine. You know? But if you're not willing to look at it, then I'm like, we just gonna crash and burn.
We're going to step away from my conversation with Prop for just a few minutes and see what kind of good trouble we can get into over at the Jukebox. All this talk about social issues, history, justice, and the role music can play in the formation of community got me thinking about a band that has been tackling these issues for nearly 50 years. Though they didn't break through to a global audience until their hit Beds Are Burning exploded in 1987, Midnight Oil had been performing soulful, issue-oriented rock for well over a decade by then. They have announced that the tour for their most recent album, Resist, will be their last. So, let me drop a couple of beer tokens into the slot here and see where it takes us. Midnight Oil traces its roots back to Sydney in 1972 and a band called Farm that was formed by drummer Rob Hurst, guitarist James Mogini, and original bassist Andrew James. With the addition of vocalist and songwriter Peter Garrett in '76 and guitarist Martin Rotze a year later, the group adopted the Midnight Oil moniker and began their long, slow, fascinating crawl to success.
There's a time and a place and a moment in space when the bad boys call the Joan. There's a bubble bouncing, and it's bouncing my way. There's two sticks in the power, works out who's gonna blow the day.
The band released their self-titled debut in 1978. Though the album failed to accomplish much commercially, it was enough to help the blue-collar group earn an underground following in their homeland so they could continue to develop. Next up was the album Head Injuries in '79, with better production and songwriting.
Well, it's a long way from Chatsworth to the top of the Gulf Island, Hudson Pacific, when the morning sun's up. It's mile after mile on the long coast road. Smell of the Japan, ocean sky blue.
Place Without a Postcard followed in '81, with even more sophisticated composition and a more textured sound.
Trouble at the dockyard, party shouting at the union, short fuses on their anger, workers in confusion. And as the babbles of the light, they stalk the streets at night. Got someone else to fight. They got someone else to play.
But it wasn't until '82 and their album 10 to 1 that they really broke through in Australia and on college radio in America. The singles U.S. Forces, Read About It, and Power and the Passion paved the way for the band to enter the global music scene in a big way.
People wasting away in paradise, going backwards once in a while, taking your time, give it a try. What do you believe? What do you believe? What do you believe is true? And nothing they say makes a difference this way. Nothing they say will do. You take all the trouble that you can afford. At least you won't have time to be born. At least you won't have time to be born. Oh, the power and the passion.
In 1987, though, with a visceral music video and a crazy cool hook, an unlikely song about Aboriginal rights became the shot heard and seen around the world.
How can we dance when our earth is turning? How do we sleep while our beds are burning? How can we dance when our earth is turning? How do we sleep while our beds are burning? The time has come to save and spare, to pay the rent now, to pay our share. The time has come, a fact's a fact. It belongs to them, we're gonna give it back. How can we dance when our earth is turning? How do we sleep while our beds are burning?
The album, Diesel and Dust, dared to confront native Australian particulars, such as that country's complicated and unjust relationship with their First Nations people, as well as global issues such as environmental destruction, nuclear proliferation, and corporate malfeasance. Unlike strict protest music, however, the Oils regularly plumbed the recesses of the human heart and imagination, both for the hardest questions and for moments of hope and inspiration.
The Lord is my temple. God is by my side. You pay rates on that temple. Build materials at the side. He gives reasons to get through the day. He doesn't have Britain's action. He just says, don't want to see you back here again.
And though Garrett's worldview was clearly informed by his own personal faith, his ability to recognize the caustic role religion was playing in politics and society, and the glaring disconnect between the gospel of peace, love, and justice and the practices of religiously motivated socio-political entrepreneurs was difficult to hear, but critical for young believers like me. Midnight Oil brought a muscularly Australian perspective to the big music world that included U2 and Peter Gabriel. band supported Diesel and Dust with significant international touring and emerged in 1990 with an even stronger and more aggressive album, Blue Sky Mining.
Well, you can say you're Peter, say you're Paul. Don't put me up on your bedroom wall. Call me the king of the mountain. I'm the liquid tonic wastelands of cactus and heat down cobblestone alleyways of Washington nations. I'd go fairy mountains of sunset and space. Down the road a familiar face. Across the wilderness, out further than the bush. I will follow you. I will follow you. I will follow you.
The lead single, Blue Sky Mine, again found universality and specificity as it dug into the Wittenoom mine disaster in which thousands of Australians had been sickened or killed by exposure to blue asbestos. It was a powerful reminder that our dreams, our desire for a blue sky future, can be used against us if we're not careful.
The candy store hoppers lie to the shareholders. They're crossing their fingers, they pay the truth makers. The balance sheet is breaking up the sky. So I'm caught at the junction, still waiting for medicine. The sweat of my brow keeps on feeding the engine. Hope the crumbs in my pocket can keep me for another night. And if the Blue Sky Mining Company won't come to my rescue, if the sugar refining company won't save me, who's gonna save me? Who's gonna save me?
The album produced another hit single, Forgotten Years, which has been cited as one of the most powerful and influential songs for a wide range of artists, including Brandon Flowers of The Killers and Bono. While the lyrics specifically recalled the role volunteer soldiers from Australia played in World War I, the underlying message is even more powerful. We must not forget the pain of wars we have not personally experienced, or the cost of ignorance or apathy when hateful fascist ideologies reemerge. I wish this song wasn't as relevant today as it was in 1990.
A shoreline was never invaded. A country was never in flames. This is a calm we breathe. This is a feeling too strong to contain. Still it aches like tetanus. It reads for politics. Signatures stained with tears. Who can remember? We got to remember the hardest years, the darkest years, the roaring years, the fallen years. These shall not be forgotten years. The hardest years, the wildest years, the desperate and divided years. We will remember. These shall not be forgotten years.
But the singles, especially from Blue Sky Mining and Diesel and Dust, really only scratch the surface of the impact these albums had on me and many fans. Every song is important, every idea critical. Midnight Oil struck a nerve, creating edgy, difficult, confrontational art that burrowed deep into complicated issues, and unlike most artists, even those who dealt with political issues, Peter Garrett wasn't simply an agitator. He was an activist. He closely examined the problems and worked for solutions. He raised awareness, yes, but he also got his hands dirty. He ran for and eventually won elected office and later served as an appointee in the Australian Parliament. He was the equivalent of a U.S. senator for almost 10 years. He put his first-rate education, including a law degree, to work. He didn't just write songs about the environment, the struggles of First Nations people, or corporate irresponsibility. He labored in those areas as Minister for the Environment and then Minister for Education.
Who'd like to change the world? Who wants to shoot the curl? Who gets to work for bread? Who wants to get ahead? who hands out equal rights, who starts and ends that fight, and not rant and rave, or end up a slave, who can make hard-won gains fall like a summer rain. Every man must be what his life can be. So don't call me the tune, I will walk away.
The band continued to put out great music throughout the 90s. Earth and Sun and Moon in 93 got all up in our faces with a chilling song called My Country.
I hear you say the truth must take a beating. The flag of camouflage for your deceiving. 'Cause I know it's written on your soul. I know we all make mistakes. This is not a case of blurred vision, it's a case of black holes, pocket holes, soul holes. And did I hear you say, my country, right or wrong?
Their 1996 album Breathe brought some of their earlier surf rock sounds and images back to the fore, but with a darker, more brooding tone. Songs like Star of Hope and Bring on the Change referenced deeply spiritual themes, but presented them in a context that was bleak, challenging, and foreboding.
Lift up your eyes, look to the heavens. Could be a sign of 7-11. Someday we'll see everything they've been selling. Bring on the change, come on. Bring on the change, I say. You gotta bring on the change.
Bones Hillman, who had been the band's bass player since '87, took center stage with his thunderous, distorted tones on that album, as well as on Redneck Wonderland in 1998. The gloves really came off on that album. The title track blended electronic pop elements, which were all the rage in the late 90s, with a blistering riff and a scorching lyric that touched on themes of xenophobia and apathy. White Skin, Black Heart was always a standout track on this one, though. With Warren Livesey back in the producer's chair for the first time since he helmed Diesel and Dust and Blue Sky Mining, the Oils found a necessary spark.
What you gonna do now? Now that you started. What you gonna do now? Now that it's done. Your words got out there. They're floating around and coming right back down. You're gonna leave us lying here, dealing with the consequences of a bad sound.
The band put out one final studio album during that era, 2002's Capricornia, before Garrett announced he was done with musical pursuits, investing more of his time working as a public servant.
Laurels carved in granite, shaped by wind and rain. White rock could be wrong, black law must be strong.
Midnight Oil reconvened occasionally over the past 20 years for benefit concerts and to call attention to certain social issues. A series of bootleg records and rarities were released until 2017 when the band reconvened for a world tour. They released a new live album called Armistice Day in 2018, taken from that tour, and released a special collaborative project in 2020 called the Makarrata Project, on which they worked with a range of native Australian artists.
First Nation, First Nation, first to deserve an explanation. First Nation, First Nation, last to receive an invitation. First Nation, First Nation, when we gonna start the conversation? When we gonna start the celebration? When we gonna end the exploitation? When we gonna say the word invasion out loud? We're waiting, still waiting.
And in 2021, shortly after the death of bassist Bones Hillman, Midnight Oil released Resist, their first full-length collection of new studio material in 20 years. This set has everything fans have loved from the Oils, with zero punches pulled. Listening to Garrett deliver these songs, many written by Jim Mogini, with some help from the Oils' other principal songwriter Hurst, I realize that it is sadly clear how little has changed in the world over this band's career. White supremacy, environmental hubris, the death of constructive politics, and general existential angst all swirl in this passionate, churning cauldron.
What you see is an act of terror. The bush surrenders to the ball and chain. As the world becomes one, the country comes undone. High as the banks of the Darling River, dry as the bed of the inland sea. As the world becomes one, the country comes undone. Hard as the rocks of the endless giver, deep as the roots of the married tree. As the world becomes one, the country comes undone. All that's left is a tiny glimmer of the days when the river was running free. As the world becomes one, the country comes undone.
It's amazing how many artists have been influenced by Midnight Oil. R.E.M., Green Day, Crowded House, INXS, U2, Pearl Jam, The Cranberries, Smashing Pumpkins, Imagine Dragons, Patti Smith, Duran Duran, even Scorpions contributed to a cover of Beds Are Burning in protest of global warming and climate change. The Oils may be the most effective band to blend politics and rock, possibly because the issues they advocated for or against were all tethered to internal reflection and not mere finger-pointing. Midnight Oil earned the right to present complicated, earnest, thoughtful rock by backing up their words with consistent actions. It is especially hard to hear how tight, disciplined, and relevant Resist is as an album, knowing that Midnight Oil is withdrawing from the world stage. The music is still with us, though, and these days, with all of the insanity going on around us, we need that music more than ever. Let's hope future generations of artists and activists will discover this essential group and allow these songs to work their way into their hearts and minds.
You live your life in a fantasy, a secret life in a hideaway, and only you can tell what's wrong and right. A broken record you can fix, a blind you draw to
it's starting to sound like the jukebox has a little too much sand in her gears. We'll let her rest for now, and after a quick break, I'll head back into the interview suite with more of my conversation with Propaganda.
Hey there, I'm Mark Feldbush, and I'm a Patreon backer of the True Tunes podcast, and I follow and listen to the weekly Spotify Gallery Stage mixtape that John curates for us every week. I get to hear classic artists and discover new artists. Every week, usually on Wednesdays, the mix is updated with around 40 songs from brand new releases to deep cuts, and from across a wide range of genres including rock, Americana, indie, gospel, blues, sacred music, soul, and so much more. It's also great to hear a mix that blends up great music that is just good, beautiful, and true without all of the genre and market limitations and boxes I hear everywhere else. You can find the mix on the front page at truetunes.com or on the show notes page for this episode. And if you follow it, it will live there in your Spotify browser and update automatically each week. And don't miss the massive archive list where all previous lists get saved. And as great as Spotify is for music discovery, please support the artists you love once you hear and discover them there. Thanks.
And now back to my conversation with Jason Propaganda Petty.
Terraform start over. Lord Jesus, let the soil teach us. Maybe value trees like they give us the air we breathe. No truer words who could speak and not the equinox. Just scream about the beef we got. Why do we even bother to try to solve problems when in 30 years we'll be out of fresh water? Empires rise and fall. Terraform start over. Better for us all. I'm a altar your summer solstice. I'm a beacon of all cultures. I'm a cosmic explorer. I'ma build a new world, big homie terraform. I'm a altar your summer solstice. I'm a beacon of all cultures. I'm a cosmic explorer. Build a new world, big homie terraform.
It occurs to me that terraform or terraforming or however that word works in this metaphor is like building the kingdom. You say that, it's kingdom over empire, kingdom over temple, kingdom over power. I think that for people to really accept the invitation to get involved in the work of kingdom building, they have to be willing to leave the empire that's made their life pretty comfortable.
Absolutely.
And that's part of the role of artists, I think, is to sometimes, upset the comfortable, as we've heard. Yeah. So as a person of faith yourself, has this journey that you've been on for the last 10, 15 years, have you had to go back and re-examine some aspects of your faith structure? Has there been some revising of things?
Absolutely. A lot of stuff had to die. A lot of repenting, like going back and thinking about the way that I thought about my grandma's faith, my great grandma's faith, as being like uninformed and, and old and like, well, they don't know what they talk about, you know what I'm saying? And just not, while at the same time knowing in the back of my mind, man, some of these were some of the holiest people I ever met, mm-hmm. and, having to go back and be like, man, I had such arrogance around my knowledge, you know what I'm saying? So I think that there was like I said, a lot of things have like hills I was willing to die on that I'm like, this is just so absurd, man. Me deciding, I felt like while you looking at scripture, while Jesus is like widening the fence continually, mm-hmm. I was narrowing the fence and being like, as in who's welcome in, who's not. And I felt like it was my job, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
To make sure to guard the fence, and just being like, man, that's not, like I said, like I'm at a place now throughout this whole process of like, how should I be in the world? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
What are the things that continue to rise to the top, across time, cultures, religions, even going there. And I'm like, well, that's clearly divine. Like that's what, because it keeps coming up. Like, I'm like, mm-hmm. This must be what Jesus meant. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, because look, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So yeah, so like a lot of the, I don't know, is that maybe dogma is the term, is it's just stale and uninteresting to me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just so much more interested again in like, what is our way of, how do you become fully human? Because I'm like, that was what, if I'm reading my scripture right, like that was God's desire for us.
Yeah. We all in, who with me is all in. No outsider, everybody all in. You guessed it, whole crowd is a guest list. I suggest you relax when Cali native get restless. I know different cause I was shown different. But the truth is I am no different. We move as a unit, whole planet's the movement. If y'all ain't here with us, then it ain't worth doing it. It's unison, Nubian, Sufian. I ain't choose sides, I won't disturb the groove when I know it's a mind bender. Introduce you to the end of the tribalist. We ain't do it on our own. We refuse to celebrate alone. Collectivo, E for effecto. You kill them with kindness, then invite them to ride and say, when the whole team pull up, say. Yeah. When the whole team pull up, say. Yeah. Let's toast to all that we've been through. Celebrate the things that ain't kill you. When the whole team pull up.
There's so much conversation now amongst people who grew up in some sort of religious tradition and are having to rethink the whole thing. Some of them are jettisoning it altogether. Some are tweaking it. But the brand name of deconstruction has become both a trigger for some people to think, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing that's ever happened in the world. And for some people, sort of a comfortable place to be able to escape to and not have to think about this tension. What is remarkable to me in reading your book is you are breaking things down. You are doing the actual intellectual, spiritual work of deconstructing certain ideas with the intent for it to be reconstructed in a truer way.
I think the term is Gungor in 2011. You know what I'm saying? Oh, like y'all just now talking about, you know what I'm saying? So exactly. I'm like, it's not. The fact that it's in the zeitgeist now to me is more comical and a sign of like sort of white Western evangelicals disconnect with the culture, period. Like your finger is not on the pulse. You know what I'm saying? Like you 10 years late, you know? So I think to me, there's that, you know. I also think in those who have put that sort of like that umbrella term together, they're talking about again, like, a very white Western evangelical experience. So when you say deconstruction, they talking about that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Which is something that I can relate to, but that wasn't my experience. A lot of the stuff that they let go of, I never embraced. Like that was never a part of my experience. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, but that's been trash. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I didn't come from like a purity culture. Like I didn't, you know what I'm saying? Like we just didn't come from that. So there's that. But as far as a person willing to check and recheck and re-examine, you know, I think a lot of that has to do with like, I don't think it should be done in a vacuum. I think a lot of that has to do with also your therapy, you know what I'm saying? And your own sort of like analysis of yourself and your own mental health, in addition to the things that you believe. So I think that when those things are done together, then they're done for the purpose of, like what I was trying to say again, is like of imagining a different future. You know, I'm not going to punt the faith because I'm mad, you know what I'm saying? Right. But I'm also not going to hold on to something that I know is destroying me. You know what I'm saying? So I think that those two things need to be done in conjunction, you know what I'm saying? And I think that like God is big enough for your doubts. Like, I don't think that there should be any fear around that. But there also needs to be that self-examination of like, man, some of this may not be, and just being able to weed through. That's why I was like done in the context of therapy, because I think some of it might be you know what I'm saying? Some of it might be your particular church. Some of it might be, you know what I'm saying, a combo of A and B, where it's like, it's you plus this toxic behavior, you know what I'm saying? And being able to wrestle through all of those particular sort of particulars, you know what I mean? But I'm like, look, dude, like I'm not afraid of not afraid of questions. I'm not afraid of, and you shouldn't be either. Like, because you having them anyway. Like, that's the other part. It's like, you having the doubts are there already. So I don't like, you acting like you ain't got them is destroying you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you already got them. So like, go down the rabbit trail. It's fine.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm cynical. I don't want reconciliation, I want your gun. Take the privilege and power, then I'll pass it to my son. Do I believe my enemies are too far from grace? My idea of a safe space is just pray to my savior, middle finger to my neighbor. Create a theology that helps promote that behavior. I'm an activist who hates change. I'm a doctor who wants pain. I'm a charity who profits off the generous. I am Jonah who wants the fall of Nineveh. Pendulum swinging, narrow-minded, ignore the middle. Screaming for peace, turn around and I sell the missiles. Hurt proprietors, pain idols and struggle whores. Don't appropriate my space, we can argue who struggles more. He said disagreement doesn't mean that I hate you. If you're intolerant of my views, then what does that make you? Cynical.
Please don't take too kindly to being lied to.
Yeah, I think that makes me cynical.
Inside,
yeah,
that I'll hate you if I fear you.
Yeah,
and be cynical blind to. So if I sound cynical, if I sound cynical, if I sound cynical, it's 'cause I'm cynical.
You say towards the end of the book, when you're talking about, and I love how you throw yourself under the bus constantly with accounts of your own struggles or failures. But when you're talking about the challenge of trying to work this out, but also be an artist, and an artist has to sell something to keep making art. You say, on the other hand, I am also a mission-driven artist. I'm not just selling stuff because it will sell. I believe in something higher, and that my music and my art is a way to bring people into that place. Something higher. I loved the homework assignments that you gave. I wonder if you could think of a homework assignment for artists, for creatives, that would include this idea of terraform, of making something, but specifically related to people who make creative things. How would you, any kind of advice or counsel or inspiration you would have for those folks?
Wow. I would say, man, what would be a good example? Probably like create from an opposite perspective of what you hold dear. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the on the other hand position? And if you could, like, just in your own journal or sketchbook, be like, yo, write out that opposite opinion. Could you articulate it? Could you do it creatively? You know what I'm saying? Getting yourself into like that person's sort of shoes and kind of understanding how they got to that conclusion. And just being able to like get yourself into that position where you're like, yo, I would never do that. And it's like, well, really? Really you wouldn't? So like, I'd say a challenge would be like, yeah, create from that perspective of something that you think you'd never do, and be like, well, why would someone land there,
Yeah, almost kind of sounds like, I think, what you called prophetic imagination.
Yeah.
It's a deep sixth sense, you know it when you see it. Multiverse, being it before I could feel it. Grandmama voice say, listen to the spirit. God don't lie to you. Some don't sit right, some don't feel right. Man, something inside say, y'all better slide till your mind be quiet. Discernment permanent, verdict indeterminate. I ain't got a word for it, but you know it when you heard it. Yeah, you feel me, real me, I ain't crazy, maybe. I ain't got no receipts or theology to base me. You been it before though, twice or more so. Advice you forego, despite the voice of your most Sorellis in your life you known for. Most of your known time in your mind. You can't explain it, but knew it all change. If you take this step, it'll never be the same.
I remember the first time I met you, I think, was you played a showcase at South by Southwest probably 10 years ago. It just popped up on my Facebook memory because we took it that night. You and Lecrae. And I remember you saying something about, when I asked you about rap and your music, you said you were a poet. You kind of were framing yourself more as a poet and not as a rapper. And then I watched how your show then was a little bit more like spoken word with some music. Tell me about your musical evolution. And now you seem to be comfortable calling yourself a rapper and a musician. How has that evolution from poet to rapper been for you? If I'm even understanding that right.
Yeah, I mean, I started off like hardcore battle rap, freestyle, underground backpacker. And then I discovered poetry, and I felt like poetry made me a better writer, just period, kind of like, and then it was more like, yeah, you're just kind of following the cloud. You know what I'm saying? Like it's working, you know what I mean? And I feel like, and I'm enjoying it. But my first love, my original native tongue was always like hip hop, like rapping.
And were you doing stuff with Tunnel Rats originally?
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah, that's the crew. So coming from that, I think if there was a time where I was trying to figure out how to meld them two things and to be honest about all of it. It's like, I think in a lot of ways, I'm not a pure anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not a pure poet. I'm also not a pure rapper. You know what I'm saying? So like, there's this part of me that really couldn't like get my head around like, well, who is Propaganda? And I think even during that time at South by, like, I was still trying to figure that out. You know what I'm saying? And I think at that moment I was like leaning so much more into the poetry part because I felt like the direction rap was going, I was like, that doesn't resonate with me. Like, I don't want to make music this way. I want to make music the way I want to make music. You know what I'm saying? And I think that like, I was like, but what's getting me on these stages, I think, is the uniqueness of somebody that can do both, but leans this way. You feel me? So I think that like, I was like, like I said, in the process of finding who Propaganda was, and is. I think today it's definitely, I'm still like multidisciplinary. I think I hold the terms much looser these days of like, well, I'm a poet, well, I'm a rapper, well, I'm an author. I'm like, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, right. So I think I've gotten to a place now, like if you ask me 10 years later, to where it's like I said, like, it's just multidisciplinary. Like, I don't feel the need to claim any of them, but if somebody needs to call me a rapper, then yes. You know what I'm saying? Somebody needs to call me an author. Yes. You know what I'm saying? So I think now it's more like, I just kind of hold it loosely, That
show you did that night slayed. I mean,
thanks, man.
It seemed like very few people in that club knew who you or Lecrae were.
Yeah.
And what I remember was just everybody was kind of the same. They weren't bad, but it was just kind of one level of quality and sounded the same. And then you came out and did your thing, and it got everybody's attention. Like, what is this? And it reminded me of Arrested Development and some of the stuff from. But then you had just a confidence in that space that was really, really remarkable. Then Lecrae came out and did his thing, and he just mopped the place up. Like, I was standing in the back with a bunch of people that didn't know who either of you guys were, and they were freaked out when you played. Like, You guys raised the bar, and that was in a mainstream as mainstream an environment as you could get,
Yeah, I think, like my obviously, like, my competitive streak was like, you're watching all this happen, and I'm like, how I'm gonna stand out? I was like, oh, I know what songs I'm gonna do. Like, I'm gonna do something, like you said, I'm gonna go all the way left. Y'all going right, everybody doing this, I'm gonna go left, Right. And again, like you said, like, you knew I come from the Tunnel Rats, so like that was more of the environment we came from than playing any church. Like, at the time, I was very uncomfortable playing in churches. It's not that I didn't believe where I was going to do something inappropriate. It was just like, that's just not familiar to me. I'm familiar with these underground scenes, you know what I'm saying, where you have to like win the crowd.
Right.
So I was like, that's what I was coming in with. Like, okay, I know this. Like, watch, I'm finna murder this. You know what I mean?
Right. So I tend to think of life in terms of movie clips or tweetable moments. Somehow I've convinced myself they last longer that way. And my wife proved me wrong when she referred to my phone as my black wife. Now, I thought it was funny. I mean, we both giggled. Now, single men take notes. Now, I'm no expert, but I don't think she was kidding. She talked about some other stuff which I really don't remember. I was too busy in my head composing a tweet where I would quote her with some sort of clever hashtag about marriage and about how much I love her to be paying attention to her at that moment. I think what snapped me back in was the silence, which indicated I was supposed to have some sort of response to whatever she was talking about. I told my father that story in hopes to get a little sympathy. My father, civil rights and Vietnam War vet, hopelessly charming on his fourth marriage, father. And rather than the customary nod that men give each other when they understand, he proceeded to tell me why he failed as my mother's husband. He said it was the same reason half of his platoon died in Vietnam, and the same reason you are deathly afraid of your daughter becoming a teenager, son. You can't hear past the explosions. Either the ones that already happened or the ones you anticipate. See, the former paralyzes. Living life in a rear view mirror, driving full speed across traffic into the center divider. So shell-shocked, you too stupid to duck when bullets are flying. Or the latter, your life a game of capture the flag. So focused on the finish line, you stepped right on a landmine. So ready to attack the day, frustrated cause you can't find your keys. Focused on the meetings you finna miss and the traffic you finna sit in to realize you've been holding your keys the whole time. Slow down.
You also do a lot of collaborations, which is very consistent with that scene as well. In fact, the new song that just came out, Cold Outside, it's funny. I was at an event here in town last weekend, and I ended up I was supposed to be doing one thing. I was supposed to be playing some songs and then just talking to people during their lunch break. And this is a conference of folks who are kind of rethinking their faith in a very critical way. But it was a small crowd, and it was so cold outside, and we set my stuff up. I literally had a record blow off my turntable like in the wind. And so I was like, well, this isn't going to work. So I made a Spotify playlist, and I saw Cold Outside. I had not even listened to it yet.
Yeah.
I just threw it in there, and it was so perfect for that, because everybody's freezing, and they're like, what is this song? It has a great groove to it. Tell me about the song and the collaboration on this one, and then just how you look at working with so many different artists across so many
it's really answer's super easy to me about collaborations. I'm like, are they dope? Do I like them? Are we gonna make something dope? Yes, let's ride. You know, Dante just DM'd me. I never met him.
Dante was the driver on that. It's hard to tell from Spotify
he just DM'd me. He was like, I got a song I think you'd be dope on. And I was like, are you like, do you know who are you familiar? You know who I am? And he was like, yeah, fool, like that's why I'm hitting you. Like, and I was like, all right. So he sent me the thing, and I was like, okay. So I was like, I knew heard his name before, but like, I don't know none of that music. Right. You know what I'm saying? So then I like looked him up, and I was like, oh, he cold. Like this, look, I'm sleep. Like I didn't know. You know what I'm saying? Right. So, but then I was like, this sound much. What do you want to do on this? This don't sound like that. So I was like, okay, is this what we doing? Like, now you sure you want me on this? Cause like, I'm gonna do me, you know? Right. And he was like, yes, this is what I want. And I'm like, all right, let's go. You know? So we did it. This was last year. I think he sent it to me. We did it last year. And yeah, it just came out.
We yelled Babylon chant down. Listen at me right now. Granny said the time to make your voices heard is right now. We ain't make it through these generations thinking him down. Sit inside a massa house could do a ting for kinfolk. Real people, real folk, chill folk had blood spill, no word spoke. None of y'all pastors are y'all church folk. Enough people asking me why I still believe, but empires crumble when the conqueror sings. Elohim and this MC, y'all can keep y'all industry. A pacifist that ain't afraid to pick up sticks, leave me alone. Got the magic of my forefathers in my bones. Making something out of nothing just to feed they homes. No one on the corner got flavor like us. Y'all can copy our style, but can't take our smiles. No one on the corner got favor like us. Breath of Jah fills these black lungs with life, y'all.
Well, man, thank you for being here. Real quick, if folks are gonna travel to see you, like an audio feed or other thing, what's a propaganda show like these days?
Bro, it's been a while, so I'm probably gonna be so excited. But yeah, it's a hybrid of rap and poetry. You know, I try to keep the hills and valleys, ebbs and flows. You're gonna sweat, but you also gonna like really, really think. Like, I'm hoping you walk away in tears, to be honest. Tears of joy.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to that. I can't wait. Thanks for being with us today, man. Really
man. Thanks for having me.
everything I need. Manufacturing friends, making up lies to impress strangers. Get that key light right, fix them angles, fix them angles. I'm from the city of angels, guilty as charged, I get so charged. FOMO driven, that kind of living ain't life giving, it's hype killing. I like to be chilling, but I ain't willing to slow down already. But everything I needed. Let me remind you of your family. And if it's like the one I come from, I know they all dysfunctional, but you come from something, bruh. Air inside your lungs, them particles of stardust. Let me cure your wanderlust. Let me cure your wanderlust. Everything you needed already. It's right here. It's right now.
Thanks, Prop. I will see you at Audio Feed. We'll be back with some final thoughts after this. True Tunes is on the road. I've been to Indiana, California, Tennessee, Iowa, and Illinois so far, and we are currently looking at opportunities around the country. These conversations have been a lot of fun, with me bringing a turntable and some records and a guitar, and often finding artists or other special guests to join me. I've also done songwriting workshops, music business clinics, and even some conversations about how we can slow ourselves down and listen to music more carefully, more thoughtfully, and yes, more spiritually. So there's kind of something for everyone. You can follow all of the action at truetunes.com/events. And if you would be interested in having me come speak in your neck of the woods, drop me a line at jjt@truetunes.com and let me know. I'm also excited to be aligning with the Porchlight Network for house shows. Porchlight is a growing network of house show venues around the country, and you can learn more at porchlight.art. So, for house shows, look me up at Porchlight. For schools, venues, churches, or other opportunities, just connect with me directly. As I pull out my soapbox, I'm thinking about the importance of music that moves me. I'm not merely talking about being moved emotionally, mind you, though that is obviously critical for any music, but what does it take for music to actually move me from here to there, to move my mind into new ideas, move my body to get involved, to just generally challenge me to do something and not merely listen. On stage, Peter Garrett was known for a strange, jerky kind of dance, as if the music and the ideas were pulsing through his body looking for a way out. It was odd, to be sure, but I could relate to it too. It was awkward, but celebratory. It moved me. As a fan of alternative music in the 80s, I was used to artists aligning themselves with political and social issues. I grew up in the age of Live Aid and Farm Aid, Amnesty International, and other organizations commanding attention. In some cases, the call to action was simply to give money to a cause. Some artists wanted to raise awareness about a particular issue, like, say, nuclear proliferation in the 70s, apartheid in the 80s, or the HIV/AIDS tragedy in the 90s. Rock the Vote wanted to move us to register and vote. I remember proudly buying a No Nukes sticker at a local band show when I was a teen. Being opposed to nukes was cool, and it cost me nothing. All I had to do was put a sticker on my car or guitar case. Not much movement there. But some artists use their work to provoke real engagement amongst their fans. Glenn Kaiser and the Rez Band folks in Chicago inspired me to volunteer at homeless shelters and community centers, and to think more carefully about difficult topics like the death penalty, materialism, and even torture. They moved me to write to my elected representatives. They moved me to give some of the small amount of money I had to help the least of these. I first heard about child sponsorship through musicians and have given to organizations like Vision Trust, Compassion, World Vision, and others since I was a teen. I was excited to actually travel to Ecuador to see how sponsorship had transformed several communities. Midnight Oil moved me in a different way. First by challenging some of the shallow political ideologies I had been handed, and then daring to connect things like corporate greed, political misinformation, and the manipulation of people's fears and insecurities to deep caverns of need in my own heart and mind. I was moved to get involved with refugee resettlement in my hometown of Aurora, Illinois, through our church. When I helped a new arrival from the Congo, I was reminded of the kinds of injustice Midnight Oil had been telling me about for years. Instead of just being moved emotionally, I allowed my heart to move my feet and hands. I won't read the entire chapter, but James 1 looms large as I think about this stuff. After talking about the importance of perspective, reminding us that trials and tribulations are not to be avoided, but to be embraced as they form us, I cringe when I think about how quick I am to try to escape pain. James also lays out a perilous but beautiful challenge to the wealthy, reminding us of what true wealth is and what our responsibilities are. He reminds us that all good gifts come from above. He challenges us in verse 19 to be quick to hear, but slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Then, in the culmination of that first chapter, he challenges us to not simply be people who hear the word, but who do something about what we hear. That's where blessing lies. As I think about my conversation with Propaganda, and I honestly cannot recommend his book Terraform highly enough, he is challenging me to build community that is hospitable to life. That's not going to happen by merely hearing from him. It's like watching a home improvement show on TV, hoping that it will somehow remodel your bedroom for you. No, if we hear real beauty, real truth, real goodness, it will move us to action of one kind or another. Lots of music has moved me emotionally. Midnight Oil moved my body, and not just to try that crazy dance Peter Garrett is known for. No, they moved me into action. Protest music is important, but music that points us in a direction and says, okay, go build something beautiful. That's what we need more of in our lives. Maybe that's the kind of dance we're being called to. And yeah, to some it might look strange, but rather than worry about shallow appearances, let's be moved by the man who made himself of no reputation. Okay, I'm stepping off my soapbox now. That's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. Make sure to check out the show notes page for the list of songs you heard here and a lot more. Thanks to Propaganda for challenging us and moving us and doing it with such humor, grace, and grit. Thanks to my co-producer, collaborator, and editor, Bruce A. Brown, for helping to bring this show into the world. I don't think I ever would have gotten off my butt and done this whole thing if Bruce hadn't both challenged me to and then offered to join me. Thanks also to Phil Keggy and Rex Paul for our theme song, and a special nod to Jeff Elbell for some help on the Midnight Oil feature. Please give us a review and a rating at Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends about the show. Find and follow our weekly Spotify mix. Sign up on our email list. We've got some amazing stuff in store. The contents of this podcast are protected by U.S. copyright law and are the intellectual property of Gyroscope Productions, with the exception of songs or clips that are from previously copywritten materials. Everything on this episode is used by permission or under fair use provisions. The program is intended for the private use of our listening audience. Gyroscope Productions can be reached at jjt@truetunes.com or P.O. Box 60401, Nashville, Tennessee 37206. Until next time, this is JJT reminding you that, as the old blues song tells us, when the Lord gets ready, you gotta move. There's still much work to be done. Peace.
You got to move. You got to move. You got to move, child. You got to move. When the Lord get ready, you gotta move.
You are a very precious, important human being.